From the plains to every town, we're building futures, breaking ground. Teachers rising, voices strong, leading change where we belong. It's about the hearts we raise, lighting up the brighter days. Kansas leads, we stand together, stronger now than ever, ever. Learning, growing, planting seeds, shaping tomorrow. Kansas leads. Tomorrow, Kansas leads.
Hello, listeners. Today in the lounge, we are bringing you the magic. And we say that word a lot, like we're bringing you the magic. No, today we are literally bringing the magic. And the meaning behind that magic is Dr. Barnes. He wants to go by Jeff, so we'll call him Jeff. He is a best-selling author of The Wisdom of Walt and Beyond the Wisdom of Walt. And he's known around the world as Dr. Disneyland. He teaches the only accredited college course on the history of Disneyland, which, in my opinion, is probably the coolest syllabus ever created. With more than 35 years of professional speaking experience and nearly 20 years leading teams in higher education, Jeff has helped countless people rethink leadership, rethink what success looks like, and rethink what storytelling actually is. His passion for the Disney parks goes beyond the rides. He believes that the parks are living classrooms filled with powerful life lessons, that Walt's life is filled with powerful life lessons. If you know what to look for and you are willing to connect those lessons to your own story. This conversation is about leadership, learning, and legacy, and I promise that you will never look at Disney the same way again. We are excited to welcome Jeff to the lounge. If you were in your making of your book, you have two very successful books. When did you realize that Disney Story had lessons that could resonate with people and could resonate with, educators? Because that's what this conference is about. It's about educators.
Right. It's in the heart of the story. It's in recognizing that, most people go to Disney and they see it as an escape. It's something that you consume in 2025, 2026. But what if rather than using it as an escape, you use it as an example? What if you understood who Walt really was and what he was trying to do in building a park that wasn't just another amusement park, but a park that told stories? People don't realize when Disneyland opened in 1955, there were 2,000 amusement parks across the country, but they were only parks that engaged us physically. They weren't parks that told stories. They weren't parks that sparked our imaginations or challenged us mentally. And so this idea that a story park could then challenge us to go out and live our own great story. Oh my gosh, I was just absolutely enthralled with that. And I was very fortunate in my career in higher ed because I always had two hats. I always had a dual role, both as an administrator and as a full-time faculty member. And as an administrator, dean of student success, I was working with struggling student after struggling student after struggling student, all of whom could do the work, but were simply not showing up. They weren't showing up for class. They weren't doing the homework. They weren't taking the exams. And, the one thing here in Southern California that we all love, other than In-N-Out Burger, is Disneyland. And I'm like, if I could leverage the students' love for Disneyland and teach them these lessons for success and tell them Walt's story and the stories that they're experiencing in the park and show them how to achieve their own goals, their own dreams, what would that be like? And that idea gave birth to the course and ultimately the book. Because again, I wanted to tell a story that connected with the reader story, that connected with the student story, and now as I get ready to come to Kansas in a couple of weeks, connects with the educator story.
Love it. And you spoke earlier about the enormous failure in the Walt Disney experience. Why do you think that story is relevant for today's teachers?
Because it's the story of life. It's what it means to be human. Um, who wouldn't want to be Walt Disney today, right? I don't know that there's anyone that had a greater impact and influence on the American 20th century than Walt Disney. But people don't know the other half of that story. They don't realize that he was born impoverished and that he had a difficult relationship with their dad. They don't realize, as Disney a couple of years ago celebrated the 100th anniversary of the founding of the company, that it was also the 100th anniversary of the bankruptcy, because that's not the story that gets told. And so if you weren't born successful, you're Walt Disney. If you ever had a difficult relationship with a parent, you're Walt Disney. If you have ever failed, you're Walt Disney. If you've ever been betrayed, you're Walt Disney. If you've ever had a goal, idea, or dream and somebody didn't believe in you, you are Walt Disney. I believe this with every fiber of my being. Walt dreamed of Disneyland, a place where parents and children could have fun together, when he took his two daughters, Diane and Sharon, to Griffith Park, and they're on the merry-go-round, and he's sitting on a bench. And while he's sitting on the bench eating peanuts and bored, he has this idea for a place where parents and children could have fun together. We all have an idea. Now, it might not change the world the way Walt Disney's idea changed the world with Disneyland, but our ideas can at least change our world, or at least our school, our classroom, our students. The difference is Walt got up off the park bench. The difference is Walt took action. The difference is, despite no one believing and all of the obstacles that were thrown in his way, Walt kept moving forward. And so the difference between us and Walt is he takes action. He gets up off the park bench and he keeps moving forward. And that's who we as educators need to be. And I think most importantly, that is the example that we need to be setting for our students so that they know how to be successful in and out of the classroom.
I totally believe that. I'm a firm believer that it's important for like my students to see me fail and how I handle failure and how I keep moving forward. And that was one of the quotes that eh, when Walt Disney opened up Disneyland, all to come to this happy place, welcome, Disneyland is your land. And I kind of feel like as teachers we can that's our classrooms, right? Like I want everyone that comes to my
Oh, I
classroom,
refer to it as the happiest classroom on earth.
right? So I think it's just a lot of that right, that was beautiful.
Yeah. And to take it a step further, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but I spent a year pitching and developing and working on the idea of a college course on the history of Disneyland. And we laid out the syllabus, we developed the curriculum, the textbooks, the guest lecturers, the field trips, all of it. I give the first lecture. It was amazing, right? The students loved it because our ideas count not just for us, but for the people that it's going to impact. And then the very next day, I was diagnosed with a life-threatening brain tumor. And they wanted to operate immediately. I was told I had the weekend to get my affairs in order, and they wanted me back on Tuesday, Cedars-Sinai, downtown Los Angeles, for brain surgery. And because of the impact of this surgery, I was going to be out of work for 2 months. Well, 2 months meant the course would be canceled. 2 months meant the history of Disneyland would be off the CBU schedule. Who knows? Never to be seen or heard from again. 2 months meant my dream died, and I refused because the course was never about the amusement park. It was about obstacles. It was about challenges. It was about adversity. And this was an opportunity for me to not just teach that, but to live it. Right. And that's the story I wanted to tell when it came to Walt and his little park in an orange grove in Anaheim, California. It became my story that semester, and it's the story I've been telling around the world ever since.
Well, to hear your personal lived experience, and obviously those that do not know the background, the history of Walt Disney, you see the success, and it's kind of like athletes. You see the most successful athletes, but you don't see the behind the scenes struggles that they deal with, the work that they put into it. Same thing with teachers.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like teaching, you get to see us at our best, but like our students, sometimes we don't let our colleagues in. We don't share our experiences with parents and let them know the behind the scenes, all the work and the failures that we have. So just like Jordan said, that modeling of that, the not just the failure, but all of the energy and the work that we pour into our profession, that's so important to share our story. So I think hearing what you share about Walt Disney, that's a reminder to me personally that I need to not just present this facade of happiness and everything, but show our students that it's okay to struggle. It's okay to fail. Just pick yourself up. It's what you do when you face that adversity. So thank you
Absolutely.
so much for sharing that message.
Yeah. Um, the word vulnerability means to lean into the wound. And Walt had a lot of wounds, and he was not afraid to lean into those. And it impacted his work, it impacted his career, it impacted his storytelling, it even impacted his park. The only good memories from Walt Disney's childhood came from ages 4 to 9 when he lived on a farm outside of Marceline, Missouri.
Missouri.
Walt was born in Chicago, Illinois, December 5th, 1901, and then they moved to Marceline when Walt was 4. The farm fails when Walt was 9, and they moved to Kansas City. The farm failing broke the little boy's heart. And Walt leans into that wound by recreating Marceline vis-a-vis Main Street, USA, when he opens up Disneyland in 1955. And I think for so many teachers and for so many leaders, we want to hide behind our wounds, right? We want to give off that air of perfection, and we don't want to share the behind the scene story. No, 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 no. Our students and the folks that we're leading need to know that we're human and need to know that we're real.
Exactly. It's that false sense of invincibility. It's that
Absolutely.
for so long, especially with male teachers, I feel like that was something, that persona that we had to live off, that if we shared our failures, that's a sign of weakness instead of
Right.
modeling that for our students and letting them know that it's okay to struggle. And like, again, this story that you're sharing, like I didn't personally know all of Walt's struggles and everything until doing a little bit of research on this. So it's incredible.
Yeah. No, and again, like we see him as this phenomenal American, entrepreneurial success story, and he is.
Mhm.
But behind all of that is just heartache and failure and betrayal. His wife, Lily, once said, "I've never seen Walt beaten at anything." What an incredible testimony, right? I mean, how many of us would love to have students in our classroom and years from now, have a spouse come up to us and say, I don't know what you taught Johnny, but man, they've never been beaten at anything, right?
Mm.
I mean, what better lessons? And, Walt, um, Walt just kept moving forward. Didn't matter. Didn't matter about his bankruptcy. Didn't matter that people didn't believe in him. Didn't matter that, his dad was a jerk. Um, he wanted to connect with people. He wanted to tell his stories, and he figured out a way to do it.
Hmm.
I think teachers, our inability to, ask for help and be open and vulnerable in our wounds, all those things also leads to what I think is one of the bigger problems right now facing education, and that's the burnout. That's the 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 rate of teachers that don't make it to 5 years is astonishing, and it's ever growing. And what advice would you give to a teacher right now that you have the high of break right now, but if, a few weeks from now, we're all going to start, feeling that again. What advice would you give to a teacher who is feeling that burnout and feeling discouraged?
Well, I think you first of all have to recognize it is very real. Um, you're not alone in that. Uh, you're not terminally unique. I did it at higher ed for 22 years, and on the other side of COVID, and not one but two brain tumors, reached my own personal breaking point. I get it. And at the end of the day, you have to recognize that you're in it for something bigger than yourself. And what exactly do I mean by that? Well, why did Walt build Disneyland? Because he wanted one. Well, what do I mean by that? It is literally the toy he never had as a child. There are stories of Walt in Kansas City when he would get up at 3:30 in the morning and help his dad deliver newspapers. And it didn't matter if it was, a blizzard in January or, a heat wave in July, Walt was out there. And they didn't have any money, so Walt didn't have any toys. But if he came across a porch where a kid had left a toy train outdoors, Walt would stop for a moment and play with that kid's train because Walt didn't have any toys and he loved trains. Well, if you look at Disneyland, it is a giant kids train set, right? You've got the train running around the perimeter and all of the little toys on the inside. So why did Walt build Disneyland? Because he wanted one. It was the toy that he never had. And Walt's been gone since December of 1966. And we keep going over and over and over again. So it didn't just matter to Walt, it mattered to us as well. And so you have to think about, why did I want to be a teacher? What was the selfish reason for why you wanted to get into the business of teaching? And how is this impacting others? How is this making a difference today, tomorrow, 5 years, 20 years from now? And when you can see that big picture, then I think that can see you through the burnout. I still hear um, from students who were in the very first class that I taught more than 25 years ago. And I feel very blessed to have those connections and to have those stories. And so, again, it's about you because this is what you wanted to do, right? And at the same time, it's not about you. There's got to be a bigger reason and a bigger picture. And so Walt built Disneyland because he wanted one, and it mattered not just to him. And so what you do in the classroom has to matter to you, and it darn sure needs to matter to those kids as well.
It's amazing. I think one of the hard things about teaching too is that as educators, we often don't get to see our own legacy. And I'm kind of connecting it back to Walt. Walt didn't get to live to see the fulfillment of his legacy. He said he only got to see Disneyland. He didn't get to see what Disney became and all of that. I think as teachers, that's something we do too. Like, we don't necessarily see the impact of I teach 10-year-olds. I don't get to see the impact of them 30 years down the road and what are they doing with their lives. We just, what you're doing it's important, and it's something bigger than you are. And yeah.
Yeah, I'll probably share this in a couple of weeks. So, repetition is the mother of skill. So I'm not afraid if people hear this twice. Uh, couple years ago, I was doing a back to school event for a school district here in Southern California. And when I was done with the presentation, a gentleman came up to me afterwards and he was like, "It's crazy that you're here today." Because oddly enough, I got this email from a former student the day before. And the email said something like this: "Dear Mr. Wilder, you probably don't remember me. I was a student in your second grade class a dozen years ago. And you asked us one day to do a journal assignment and to write about who we wanted to be and what we wanted to do when we grew up." Now, I don't know about you, but I don't remember any assignments from second grade. Maybe you guys teach second grade and you remember what you're asking the kids to do, but I'm like, okay, where's this going to go, right? And the student went on to write, "I said to you in my journal that I wanted to be Mickey Mouse at Disneyland. And unlike any of my friends and any of my family, you wrote in my journal that if that's what I wanted to do and who I wanted to be, I should go for it. And I'm writing today to let you know, Mr. Wilder, that as of this morning, I am Mickey Mouse at Disneyland."
Let's go.
Do it.
And so when I think
Chills.
about, you know, who do we need to be in this, you know, Disney universe? We don't need to be Mickey Mouse. We don't need to be Walt Disney. We don't need to be Michael Eisner. We don't need to be Bob Iger. We just need to be Mr. Wilder. We need to understand our students. We need to know who they are and, more importantly, who they want to be, and encourage them and inspire them and motivate them and connect with them in such a way that a year from now or a dozen years from now, they're going to write back and say, "Thank you, because I'm where you said I could be."
With speaking of that, that goes along with the overall theme of what Jordan and I on so many of our podcasts that we've hosted, we talk about the importance of relationships. Like that right there, everything you just said, it echoes our mindset completely. So
Mm-hmm.
like with that overall, like is there something that teachers, if they went into their classroom tomorrow and they could make a change and just one small shift that they could bring the magic into their classroom without adding a lot to their plate, is there something that you would advise them? Like obviously that building of relationships and everything that you just said, believing in those students. Is there another shift other than that they could
Tell,
add
tell
immediately?
stories. And what I mean by that, and we've already talked about it a little bit in terms of like being vulnerable. Um, but let the kids know your story and where you've struggled and how you've gotten to where you are. Make it real for them and let them know it's okay, to have those obstacles and to have those adversities and to have that conflict, right? Because then they're going to feel better about whatever they're dealing with on a day to day, week to week, month to month basis. I can remember in January of 1974, my dad was in the Air Force. We moved from North Carolina to the Panhandle of Florida. I am the new kid in the classroom. And that's never fun, right? Especially in fifth grade. And I walk in and instantly I just get made fun of. I'm the new kid. I've got big ears, you know. And the teacher, Miss Barbara, took me under her wing and shared with me, some of her stories of not fitting in when she was that age. And the second she shared that, I knew I was going to be okay. She and I talk on Facebook to this day,
Mm.
almost every week. And we connected not over curriculum, but over story.
Um, that's so true. I think letting it's what I let my kids in my life. My kids know everything that goes on, about this. Actually fun. I had I teach a girl who was her birthday today, and her mom's also a kindergarten teacher in my building. And I was talking to her, and she goes, "Yeah, we went to go drop off snacks in your room this morning." And I asked her, I said, "Hey, do you think Mr. Ulick's gonna mind if I open up his door?" And she looked at me and she goes, "Oh no, it's Tuesday. Mr. Ulick has to take his daughter all the way into Lawrence, so he's not going to be here till like it's 8 o'clock. So you can just go on in there and you can just go put it on the back table." It's like they know my life, man.
Because you're a real person, and that's the way it should be, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I just heard this story in August. My wife and I, we had an opportunity to go to Walt Disney's Storybook Mansion, and there were a couple of presenters there, and one of them was the woman who designed the wallpaper for Haunted Mansion, right? And I'm like, oh my God, like, is there more iconic wallpaper in the history of interior design than that wallpaper? And I'm like listening to her tell the backstory. Well, she was with Walt on a trip to New Orleans and then ultimately the 64, 65 New York World's Fair. And he asked her before she got on the corporate plane, have you ever been to New York? And she said, no, this is my first time. Walt didn't say another word about it. For the 2 weeks that they were in New York, her driver picked her up, took her from the hotel to the fair site, a different route in the morning and a different route at night, every single day for 14 days. And finally, at the end of the trip, she's like, I know I'm new to New York and this is a big city. Surely, like, there had to have been a way to go the same way, like twice in a row. Why in the world did we go a different route every single time? And she said, those were Walt Disney's instructions. And she's like, well, what do you mean? Well, he found out that you had never been to New York and this is a work trip, but he wanted you to see as much of the city as possible. So he instructed me to take you on a different route so you could see as much as possible. That's Walt being a real person.
Wow.
And connecting with an employee. If Walt can do that with an employee, we can do that as teachers with students.
We got the Zoom is telling me we got 6 minutes left. The boss. We'll call Zoom the boss. The boss is telling me we got 6 minutes left, man. One question I do want to get to is, when you look at teachers today and what we face and what the system throws at us, what education looks like, what gives you hope? What gives you hope when you look at teachers and education today?
The human spirit of resiliency. And again, I'm not saying that the system isn't impossible. I'm not saying parents aren't impossible. And I'm not saying that kids aren't a special kind of special in 2026. And at the end of the day, the resiliency of the human spirit always finds a way, right? And I believe that we will continue to figure out how to leverage technologies and leverage the opportunities in front of us as long as we see them more as opportunities rather than challenges and obstacles.
And you just drop really good bombs all the time.
So Jeff, obviously you're going to be our keynote at our amazing conference that we have coming up. If quickly, what role do conferences like this, the Arkansas Leads Conference in Wichita, what role does that play in sustaining education?
Well, I think it brings people together and helps people to realize that, they're not alone in the challenges that they're facing and that we can have a united front in coming together and, facing this together. And then at the same time, let's get a little bit motivated, let's get a little bit inspired, and let's hold each other accountable for, moving forward with a level of consistency. Because let's be honest, I mean, motivation and inspiration are great, but they're only going to take us so far. What's the one thing we want to remember from the conference and continue to be doing 30 days, 60 days, 90 days from now? And are we willing to have the hard conversation of accountability with each other moving forward?
And Jeff, I know you have the opportunity to speak in front of a lot of audiences, but I guarantee the energy that you
I
are
can't
going
wait.
to see, oh my goodness, there's nothing like a Kansas Leads conference. The connections that we make and the energy that we walk away from this conference with, you're gonna tell stories about it for years.
Yep. Well, and I feel like I'm coming home in the sense of the signature line from my keynote is following the bankruptcy. Walt's Laugh-O-Gram studio in Kansas City, rather than giving up, Walt went all in. And he went all in by boarding a train with $40 a single suitcase and a one-way ticket. And I think if you're going to be a successful teacher today, rather than giving up, and that's a huge temptation, I want to challenge you to go all in on your kids. What does that look like? $40, single suitcase, one-way ticket. You and your classroom, you and your kids, you're going to be successful. You're going to make it. It's the only choice, no matter what.
Yeah, you're. I think you're going to be in for a surprise. I think what I love about Leeds is, every single person gave up our all important weekend, and we wanted to be here.
There are not a lot of Saturday morning conferences.
Yep. Every single person is willingly giving up their weekend.
Love it.
Dwayne, I consider Dwayne one of my best friends. I met Dwayne at a Leeds conference. That's where all of this started. It's the connections we build, that they're real, they're genuine. Everyone's there to learn and do better. This one's going to be a little bit different than some of our other ones, and I'm super excited by it. This interview has only made me more excited by it, so it's going to be great.
Yeah. Well, Lindsay and I can't wait. And interestingly enough, we have more friends in Kansas than we do in Southern California. So again, we feel like we're coming home, right? And I was there a couple of years ago. We're going to be there in a couple of weeks. And I had 22 years in higher education. I miss students. I miss the classroom. I miss educators. So I'm looking forward to it as much as you folks are.
I see you've been there, but you're not that far away from Marceline when you're in Kansas.
That's true. And Lindsay's never been.
So there might be a trip for you. I've always thought that Disney's missing the boat, not doing Disney doesn't own anything out there.
I know.
I thought they're missing the boat there.
I agree. Yep.
So.
I agree 100%. They have supported some stuff there. So before Walt died, they were going to go in and do some stuff, but he passed away before anything official happened.
So, yep, beautiful. Dwayne, I'm not quite sure how long we have. We have less than minutes. Take us out.
We really want to thank Jeff for taking the time to hop on with us tonight, and more importantly, for being one of our keynote speakers at our upcoming conference on January 23rd and 24th. Jordan, thank you for giving me this opportunity to be part of this magic right here. And signing off from our classroom to yours, we see you, we get you, and we're right there with you. Keep changing the world one child at a time.
And we will be right there with you in like a few weeks, guys.
Oh, can't wait.
It's going to be great.
Ooh.
We lift each other every day, advocating, taking part. Service starts within the heart. It's about the dreams we chase, every child a brighter place. Kansas Leads, we stand together, stronger now than ever, ever. Learning, growing, planting seeds, shaping tomorrow. Kansas Leads. Tomorrow, Kansas Leads. Leadership in every hand, voices rising across the land. Side by side, we'll meet the